He mocked his black driver, called her just the help. Minutes later, his billion-dollar deal was collapsing in flames. Then she spoke fluent Mandarin, then German, Swahili, then French, stunning every executive in the room. 9 languages. 9 chances to save everything he built. The man who laughed was suddenly silent. What she said next didn't just save his company, it changed him forever. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's continue. The morning sun bled gold over Manhattan's skyline, catching the sleek lines of a black Mercedes-Maybach S-Class gliding through the city streets. Inside, the hum of the engine was a whisper beneath the rhythm of power, luxury leather, soft jazz playing low, and the faint tang of money in the air. Ethan Sterling, billionaire CEO of Sterling Global Holdings, tapped his watch impatiently. His reflection in the tinted glass looked sharp, perfect, salt and pepper hair, tailored navy suit, and eyes that had forgotten what softness looked like. "Where the hell is she?" he muttered. Just then the driver's door opened, and a tall woman stepped out, her stride confident and measured. She wore a fitted charcoal gray jacket over her uniform and black gloves that caught the morning light. Her name tag gleamed, Sophia. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said evenly, holding open his door. He glanced up briefly, taking in her calm expression, too calm, he thought, before sliding into the back seat. "You're late." "Traffic on 5th was heavy, sir," she replied smoothly, closing his door. Ethan scoffed. A driver who blames traffic. How original. Sophia took a quiet breath, her hand steady on the wheel. "I'll make up the time." "You'd better," he said sharply. "We've got a Zurich call at 8, and if I'm not in the office by then, I'll be talking to HR about your punctuality." The bite in his voice was deliberate, the kind of tone that tested people. Sophia didn't flinch. "Understood, sir." As they pulled into traffic, Ethan started barking orders into his headset. "No, James, no one at the translation firm gets paid if they can't handle basic Mandarin. We're days away from signing, and we're losing trust because of semantics. Fix it." He hung up, exhaling sharply. Idiots. Every last one of them. Sophia glanced at him in the rearview mirror, just a flicker. "Difficult morning?" "Did I ask for conversation?" he snapped. She paused, eyes back on the road. "No, sir." "Then don't." The air between them thickened, silent but charged. Ethan's phone chimed again, and he answered without greeting. "Yes, I saw the Shanghai revision. It's garbage. If they don't fix it, the $1 billion deal dies. I don't care what cultural nuance they're whining about." Sophia's brow arched slightly, but she said nothing. She'd seen this kind of man before, brilliant, powerful, but so blinded by pride that they mistook arrogance for intelligence. At the next red light, Ethan rubbed his temples and muttered, "Unbelievable. I should have learned Mandarin years ago, but who's got time for that?" Without turning, Sophia said quietly, "Languages save more deals than lawyers do." Ethan looked up, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just an observation, sir. Don't get philosophical. You're paid to drive, not advise." "Yes, sir." But her tone wasn't submissive. It carried an undertone, calm but edged, like a blade hidden in silk. When the light turned green, she accelerated smoothly, cutting into a lane just before a taxi could close the gap. Ethan jolted slightly. "Careful," he barked. Sophia's voice was level. "I said I'd make up the time, sir." He stared at her reflection in the mirror, the cool precision in her eyes, the unspoken defiance behind her calmness. For the first time, his smirk faltered. They rode in silence for several minutes. The city flashed by, towering steel, rushing commuters, 1,000 stories intersecting at once. Inside the Maybach, time slowed. Ethan began scrolling through a document, muttering fragments of French and broken Mandarin. "Who writes this garbage? I swear translators do this on purpose." Sophia's lips twitched faintly. "What?" he demanded. "Nothing, sir." He frowned. "You think you could do better?" "I didn't say that." "Good," he shot back. "Because the last thing I need is another amateur pretending they understand billion-dollar contracts." "Understood." Her tone was cool, but her grip on the wheel tightened, not in anger, but in restraint. After a moment, she said evenly, "For what it's worth, sir. Mandarin doesn't translate neatly into English. Sometimes it's not about the words, it's about the meaning behind them." He laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Please. You drive cars for a living. I deal with global corporations. Let's not mix up experience with expertise." Sophia gave a small, unreadable smile. "Of course, sir." They reached Sterling Tower, a monolith of glass and steel that touched the clouds. Ethan stepped out, slamming the door harder than necessary. "Wait here. I'll be 10 minutes. Sophia watched him stride into the building, phone glued to his ear, voice clipped with frustration. She exhaled slowly, her reflection in the rearview mirror meeting her gaze, calm, controlled, but with the faintest flicker of something deeper. Pride, maybe. Or restraint. 45 minutes later, Ethan stormed out of the tower, his usually controlled composure cracking. "They're threatening to walk away," he said furiously, tossing his briefcase onto the seat. "Zurich can't talk to Shanghai, the translators are confused, and no one knows what this damn clause means. If we get it wrong, we lose everything." He slumped back, muttering, "I need a miracle." Sophia hesitated. Then quietly, "Sir, I might be able to help." He shot her a glare. "What could you possibly help me with?" She met his eyes in the mirror, unflinching. "I speak Mandarin." His expression froze. "You what?" "I speak Mandarin," she said calmly. "Along with 8 other languages. I graduated from Georgetown University with a degree in linguistics." He blinked, stunned silent for a beat. "You studied linguistics? At Georgetown?" "Yes, sir." He stared, then scoffed, the reflex of a man uncomfortable with surprise. "You're telling me my driver speaks 9 languages?" "I am," she replied simply. "Prove it." Sophia reached into the glove box for a notepad, scribbled a phrase in Mandarin, and handed it back. "That says, trust is worth more than control." Ethan read it, then frowned, realizing he'd seen similar words in the contract. "Give me that document," she said gently but firmly. He hesitated, then handed it over. She scanned it swiftly, lips moving as she translated under her breath. A minute later, she pointed at a single line. "This clause," she said. "You've translated as exclusive supplier. It actually means a trusted partner for long-term cooperation. It's not about dominance, Mr. Sterling. It's about respect. Change this and they'll sign." Ethan stared, the air seeming to drain from the car. "How did you?" Sophia looked back through the mirror, eyes steady. "Because, sir, sometimes, power doesn't come from talking the loudest. It comes from understanding the quietest words." Ethan sat back, speechless. The arrogance in his posture had evaporated, replaced by something rarer, humility. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with noise and motion. But inside the Maybach, the world had gone still. For the first time, Ethan truly saw Sophia, not as a driver, but as the woman who might have just saved his billion-dollar empire. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt something shift deep within him. If you were Sophia, mocked, dismissed, underestimated, would you have spoken up, or stayed silent? The rest of the drive to Sterling Global's headquarters was steeped in silence, not the heavy, angry kind, but something more fragile. Ethan Sterling sat in the back seat, the contract clutched loosely in his hand, glancing occasionally at the rearview mirror as if to confirm that Sophia was real. He wasn't a man who liked being surprised. Surprise meant unpredictability, and unpredictability was bad for business. But the woman in front of him, the one who just corrected his billion-dollar mistake, was a contradiction wrapped in calm composure. Finally, he cleared his throat. "You worked at Georgetown, you said?" "I studied there," Sophia corrected, keeping her eyes on the road. "What does one do with a degree in linguistics, other than drive CEOs around?" His tone carried the faint edge of a man trying to reclaim superiority, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. "I used to consult for multinational firms," she replied. "Language policy, cross-cultural negotiations, that sort of thing." Ethan blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes, sir." He hesitated. "Then why are you driving a car now?" Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. Because sometimes, life doesn't ask for permission before it changes direction. Her words hung in the air, heavy with something unspoken. Ethan leaned forward, curiosity overriding pride. What happened? Sophia gave a small, humorless smile. A family emergency. My mother got sick, and I needed a flexible job. Driving gave me that. He nodded slowly, surprised at how easily she said it. No self-pity, no resentment, just truth. Does she still? She passed, Sophia said quietly. Ethan's throat tightened before he could stop it. I'm sorry. Thank you, she said, voice steady. She was proud that I made it to America. I promised her I'd make something of it. I still intend to. For the first time, Ethan found himself without a retort. He built an empire on reading people, investors, competitors, politicians, but he couldn't read Sophia. Her calm wasn't submission, it was control. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. He realized something else too, her tone when she spoke Mandarin, her quiet confidence, her intelligence cloaked under uniform fabric. She carried herself like someone who belonged in boardrooms, not behind the wheel. They reached the headquarters garage. Ethan's assistant, a nervous young man named Kyle, was already waiting near the elevator. Sir, Zurich is still on hold. The Shanghai team is asking for clarification on the clause again. Ethan exhaled sharply. Get legal on the line. Tell them to stand by. He paused, glancing back at Sophia. For a moment, he seemed to wrestle with himself. Then with a reluctant nod he said, You. Come with me. Sophia blinked. Sir. You just saved this deal. You're not sitting in the car while I fix it. Kyle looked startled. Sir, she's your. Ethan's tone sliced through the air. She's coming. Sophia hesitated only a moment before stepping out, smoothing her jacket. As they walked through the sleek marble lobby, heads turned. A billionaire CEO striding beside his black chauffeur, it was enough to make the receptionists whisper behind manicured hands. Ethan ignored them, but Sophia felt the eyes. The judgment. The silent questions. Still, she walked with quiet dignity, her heels clicking in even rhythm beside his polished loafers. Inside the conference room, 3 department heads were arguing over video screens. Zurich's team filled one window, Shanghai's another. The translators were flustered, the lawyers defensive. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone stopped talking. Silence fell. He gestured toward Sophia. This is Sophia. She's assisting with the translation. Listen to her. Several eyebrows rose. Kyle shifted uncomfortably. Sophia approached the screen with calm confidence. Good morning, she began, first in English, then in Mandarin, her tone flowing seamlessly between languages like music. The Shanghai delegates blinked in surprise, then leaned forward, visibly relaxing. Ethan watched, speechless, as Sophia guided the conversation with ease. She explained the revised phrasing, translated nuances, even laughed softly when one of the delegates made a cultural joke no one else understood. Within 20 minutes, the impossible had happened, the tension evaporated. The Zurich lead nodded. If Shanghai's satisfied, we're satisfied. Let's finalize the signatures. The Shanghai director smiled warmly at Sophia. It's refreshing to speak to someone who understands our intent. Thank you. Sophia bowed her head respectfully. It's an honor. When the call ended, applause broke out in the boardroom. Ethan didn't join in, not because he wasn't impressed, but because he was too busy watching her. She wasn't just fluent, she was brilliant. Every word she'd spoken was precise, every gesture subtle but powerful. She carried authority without demanding it. He finally found his voice. You just saved $1 billion merger, he said quietly. Do you have any idea what you just did? Sophia looked at him evenly. You said you needed a miracle. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed, genuinely. Fair point. He extended his hand. Thank you, Sophia. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, his eyes softer than before. For a fleeting second, something unspoken passed between them, respect, maybe admiration. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment. I'll get the car ready, sir, she said, turning to leave. Wait, Ethan said. Stay for a second. Sophia turned. He looked down at the table, frowning as if sorting his thoughts. I owe you an apology. I was out of line earlier. Apology accepted, she said softly, her smile small but real. He studied her, then asked, why didn't you tell me who you really were before? Sophia tilted her head slightly. Would you have listened? Ethan couldn't help but smile, a little embarrassed, a little humbled. Probably not. She nodded. Then I chose my moment. There was no arrogance in her tone, just quiet certainty, and it made him like her more. As she turned to go, Ethan called after her. Sophia. Yes, sir. Don't go too far. I think we'll need your brilliance again soon. She smiled faintly. I'm always nearby, sir. That's what drivers do. He chuckled, watching her disappear down the hall, and for the first time that day, Ethan Sterling, the man who controlled everything, felt something he hadn't in years. Gratitude. But beneath it, something else stirred, curiosity, and an unfamiliar warmth that unsettled him in ways numbers never could. He sank into his chair, replaying her voice in his head, steady, confident, intelligent. He realized with a shock that he wanted to know more about her, not just what she could do, but who she was. Outside, through the glass walls, he could see her stepping into the Maybach, her figure poised and graceful in the morning light. He smiled faintly. Maybe miracles didn't fall from the sky. Maybe, sometimes, they drove you to work. The following morning, the skyline wore a different kind of light, the afterglow of victory. Sterling Global's billion-dollar merger was the talk of every financial network, and Ethan Sterling's name trended across business headlines for all the right reasons. Yet, instead of basking in triumph, Ethan sat behind his desk in his corner office, staring at the front-page photo on his tablet. He wasn't looking at himself, he was looking at her. Sophia, standing just behind him in that shot, calm and composed, her reflection caught in the glossy black of the Maybach's window. He hadn't realized until then that her presence had become grounding. A knock at the door pulled him out of thought. Sir, Kyle said, stepping in nervously, you're going to want to see this. He handed Ethan a printed email. The subject line read, Urgent, contract dispute from Shanghai office. Ethan's stomach tightened. He skimmed the message. The Shanghai partners had found another clause they believed was misrepresented. A single mistranslation could unravel everything they'd signed the day before. He cursed under his breath. Not again. Kyle hovered awkwardly. Should I get legal on this? Ethan hesitated. Logic said yes. Instinct said no. He grabbed his phone, dialing a number he hadn't expected to use again so soon. Hello. Morning, Sophia. It's Ethan Sterling. There was a brief silence, then a composed reply. Good morning, sir. Is everything all right? No, he said bluntly. We've got another issue with the Shanghai deal. I need your help. Can you come up to the executive floor right now? I'm outside your building already, she replied. I was waiting in case you needed me. Ethan blinked. You what? Why? You seemed like the kind of man who'd need help again, she said, and he could hear the hint of humor beneath her professionalism. For the first time in a long time, he laughed. You might be right about that. Minutes later, Sophia entered the office, her posture straight, her presence calm but commanding. She wore the same driver's uniform, but somehow, in the bright office light, it looked like armor. Ethan handed her the printed email. They're saying this clause about intellectual property violates their legal boundaries. I need to know what's really going on before Zurich pulls out. Sophia scanned the lines, her brow furrowing slightly. Then she exhaled. It's not the words. It's the tone. The tone. Ethan asked incredulously. Yes, she said, setting the paper down. In Mandarin, the phrase you used implies possession, as if you own the innovation. But their wording implies shared creation. They're offended because your translation made it sound like you're claiming their work. Ethan groaned. So they think we're trying to steal from them. Exactly, Sophia said softly. And if you don't fix it immediately, they'll walk. He rubbed his temple, his voice tight. Then we'll rewrite the clause. I'll have legal. No, she interrupted gently but firmly. If you send another lawyer, they'll see it as damage control. You need to speak to them yourself. In person. Ethan looked up sharply. In person? That's halfway around the world. Yes, Sophia said. Which means you should leave tonight. He leaned back, processing the audacity of her suggestion. You're telling me to fly to China to fix a deal personally? I'm saying it's the only way to prove sincerity, she replied. And if you want them to believe your intentions, you'll need someone who can help you navigate their language and culture. Their eyes met. You're volunteering? He asked. Sophia smiled faintly. You'll need a translator, won't you? Something in her tone made him pause. Confidence, challenge, maybe even trust. He let out a breath, half a chuckle. You really are something else, Sophia. I'll take that as a compliment. Ethan stood, grabbing his jacket. Pack your bags. We're leaving on the jet at 6. Sophia hesitated only long enough to reply, Understood, sir. That evening, the private jet hummed quietly above the clouds. The cabin was dim, the city lights below fading into an endless sea of darkness. Ethan sat across from Sophia, both of them silent for a while, the hum of the engines filling the spaces where words should have been. Finally, he said, You know, I don't usually travel with employees. She gave a small smile. Then consider this a change of pace. He studied her for a moment, the way she sat upright, reading through the contract again, her focus absolute. You're different from anyone I've ever worked with, he said quietly. I'll take that as a compliment, she echoed. He chuckled softly. You should. Most people in my world are afraid to tell me I'm wrong. Sophia looked up. Fear makes people small. I learned a long time ago that truth spoken calmly is more powerful than silence kept politely. Her words landed harder than he expected. He leaned back, watching her. You really don't flinch, do you? Would it make you listen more if I did? He smiled. Touché. The cabin fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence this time, the kind that hums with mutual awareness. A few hours later, Ethan dozed off, his head tilted slightly toward the window. Sophia glanced at him, her expression softening for the first time. She remembered the first time she'd seen his face on a business magazine, Ethan Sterling, the relentless visionary. Back then, she'd admired him from afar, fascinated by his intellect and drive. She'd never imagined she'd end up driving him, let alone flying halfway around the world to save his company. But fate had a strange way of rewriting stories. As the plane descended toward Shanghai, dawn brushed the clouds in shades of rose and gold. Ethan stirred awake, running a hand through his hair. Are we there? Almost, Sophia said. You'll want to rest. You'll need your focus. He nodded, watching her as she organized the documents with meticulous care. Something shifted in him again, a subtle awareness that this woman wasn't just saving his deals. She was teaching him humility, grace, and something dangerously close to admiration. When they landed, the city stretched out below like a glittering web, vast, alive, unknowable. Ethan felt an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. Not nerves. Anticipation. They stepped off the jet, greeted by the sharp chill of the Shanghai morning. The local team was waiting, anxiety etched across every face. Mr. Sterling, the interpreter began nervously, the board is very unhappy. They may cancel the contract. Ethan turned to Sophia, his voice low. You ready? Sophia's eyes met his. I was born ready. They entered the conference room, a sleek expanse of glass and steel, faces stern and skeptical on the other side of the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Sophia stepped forward, bowed respectfully, and began to speak, her voice calm, fluent, confident. Ethan watched as the rigid expressions around the table began to soften, curiosity replacing suspicion. Sophia wasn't just translating, she was connecting. Every gesture, every inflection carried the weight of understanding. It was in that moment that Ethan realized, this wasn't just about a deal anymore. This was the beginning of something much larger, and far more dangerous, than business. The Shanghai skyline glittered through the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, its metallic towers piercing the dawn mist. Inside, the tension was palpable, a quiet, sharp current beneath polite smiles. Ethan Sterling sat at the table's head, flanked by his exhausted legal team. The Shanghai executives sat across from him, their posture firm, eyes guarded. But as the discussion began, it was clear who truly commanded the room. Sophia. Her voice flowed effortlessly between Mandarin and English, her tone adjusting like water finding its level. She didn't just translate, she interpreted intent, emotion, subtext. When Ethan's phrasing came across as too assertive, she softened it. When the partner's replies hinted at hesitation, she framed them in a way that invited trust rather than defensiveness. Ethan watched her with growing admiration. Every gesture she made seemed deliberate, graceful yet powerful. The more she spoke, the more he realized how blind he'd been to the world beyond his boardrooms. Still, there were moments when pride tried to reassert itself. During a pause, Ethan leaned toward her and whispered, "I don't like how they're questioning our terms. Tell them we've already compromised enough." Sophia gave him a patient look, the kind one gives to a child insisting on touching fire. "With respect, sir, that will undo all the goodwill we've built this morning." He frowned. "I'm not here to beg, Sophia." "You're here to build trust," she countered quietly. "If you can't do that, you'll lose everything you just saved." Ethan opened his mouth to retort but stopped. Something about her tone, calm but unyielding, reminded him of the woman she described in the car, her mother. The one she'd lost, the one who'd taught her dignity and discipline. He exhaled slowly. "All right. Your call." Sophia nodded once and turned back to the table, seamlessly continuing the negotiation. By noon, the mood had shifted. The Shanghai partners were smiling now, nodding as Sophia clarified subtle points. When the lead director rose to shake Ethan's hand, Sophia's translation came with a faint smile of victory. "Congratulations, Mr. Sterling," she said. "They've agreed to move forward." Ethan grinned, genuine and wide. "You did it again." She shook her head. "We did it." As they walked out of the building together, the morning haze had given way to a clear blue sky. The air felt lighter, charged not with tension but triumph. Ethan stopped just outside the glass doors, looking at her. "I owe you dinner. And before you say no, it's not a request. You saved my company twice in 48 hours. Sophia hesitated, then smiled faintly. "All right. But only if you promise not to talk about business." "Deal," he said, smirking. That evening, they met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Huangpu River. The city lights shimmered like jewels across the dark water. Sophia arrived in a simple black dress, elegant yet understated. When she walked in, Ethan's breath caught, not because she was beautiful though she was, but because she looked free. He stood as she approached. "You clean up well, Sophia." "I could say the same for you," she replied, sitting down with a smile. Over dinner, they talked, not about contracts or clients, but about life. Sophia told him about growing up in Atlanta, how her mother had worked 2 jobs to send her to Georgetown. She spoke of her passion for language, how words could build bridges or burn them, how the right sentence could change the course of an entire nation. Ethan listened more than he spoke, which was rare for him. "You really believe words can change everything?" he asked. "I've seen them do it," she said. "You can command people with money, but you move them with language. That's real power." He leaned back, studying her. "You're wasted behind a steering wheel." She smiled, sipping her wine. "Maybe. But it's taught me things I'd never have learned otherwise." "Like what?" She met his gaze. "How people treat those they think they're above says more about their character than anything else." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, guilt flickering in his chest. He thought of that first morning, his laughter, his dismissiveness, his arrogance. "You mean, people like me," he said quietly. Sophia's eyes softened. "You're learning." They both laughed then, the tension breaking. For a while, conversation flowed easily. They talked about music, food, travel. Ethan found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone, his failed engagement, his fear of becoming like his father, a ruthless businessman who'd valued profit over people. Sophia listened without judgment. "Maybe that's why you work so hard," she said gently. "Trying to prove you can win differently." He looked at her, a little stunned. "You really do read people." "I listen," she said simply. "Most people don't." As the evening wound down, silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, delicate, alive. When the bill came, Ethan reached for it automatically. Sophia stopped him. We're not in your office, Mr. Sterling. Let me get this one. He raised an eyebrow. You're going to buy dinner for a billionaire? Consider it a gesture of equality. He laughed. Fair enough. They stepped outside, the city's pulse thrumming around them. The breeze carried the scent of rain and river water, cool and clean. For a moment, they stood close enough for their shoulders to brush. Ethan turned toward her, his voice lower now. You know, I can't remember the last time someone talked to me like that. Or listened the way you do. Sophia smiled faintly. Maybe you've been listening to the wrong people. The words lingered between them, a quiet truth that felt far more intimate than it should have. A car horn blared somewhere down the street, breaking the spell. Sophia glanced away, clearing her throat. You should get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Right, he said, reluctant. Tomorrow. As she walked toward the car, Ethan watched her go, the rhythm of her stride, the grace of her movement. He felt something dangerous stirring in his chest again. Admiration had turned into respect. Respect was becoming something else. And that scared him. Back in the hotel that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying her words, her laughter, the way she'd looked in the city lights. He stared at the ceiling, exhaling slowly. What are you doing to me, Sophia? He whispered to no one. Meanwhile, in her room across the hall, Sophia sat by the window, looking out over the glowing skyline. She was smiling, just a little, but her eyes were thoughtful. She had seen men like Ethan before, proud, brilliant, broken in ways they didn't understand. But this one was different. He wasn't unreachable. He was learning, softening. And that made him both dangerous and compelling. She whispered to herself in Swahili, Usiinji moyo wangu, don't enter my heart. But even as she said it, she knew it was already too late. Have you ever found yourself caring for someone you swore you'd never get close to, someone who challenged everything you believed about people? The morning after their quiet dinner by the Huangpu River, the city awoke drenched in silver mist. Sophia stood by the hotel window, her reflection merging with the skyline as she sipped her tea. She told herself the flutter in her chest was nothing, just the residual adrenaline from yesterday's triumph. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something had changed between them. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, Ethan stood there, wearing a crisp suit but looking oddly hesitant. Morning, he said, clearing his throat. We have a situation. Another one? She asked, setting her cup aside. He nodded grimly. The Zurich board wants to renegotiate their stake. They think we're favoring Shanghai now. They're threatening to pull out if we don't reassert control. Sophia sighed, shaking her head. They're reacting to cultural fear. They think compromise means weakness. Exactly, he said. But if I push back too hard, I'll lose Shanghai's trust. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, both aware that this was no longer just business. It was balance, between pride and diplomacy, between power and grace. Sophia folded her arms. You'll have to walk a line most men in your position never learn to walk. Ethan arched a brow. And that line is? Respect, she said softly. The kind that doesn't need dominance to prove strength. He studied her face, and for the first time, she saw something raw flicker behind his controlled gaze. You make it sound easy. It isn't, she said. But it's worth it. He smiled faintly. Then help me walk it. An hour later, they entered a high-rise conference suite buzzing with tension. Zurich's representatives, 3 older men in tailored suits, sat opposite them, their expressions tight with skepticism. Ethan began firmly, addressing the issues point by point. Sophia sat beside him, observing silently at first. But she could feel the mood souring. Every time Ethan emphasized profit margins, Zurich's lead negotiator's jaw tightened. The conversation was spiraling. She leaned toward him. You're losing them. I'm trying to reason with them, he murmured back. You're trying to win, she corrected quietly. And they can feel it. Ethan exhaled, his frustration mounting. Then what do you suggest, Sophia? She turned to the Zurich delegates and began speaking, in fluent German. Ethan blinked. You speak German too? Sophia didn't answer. Her tone was calm, her words deliberate. The room fell quiet as she wove empathy into every sentence, reframing Ethan's intentions not as competition, but as collaboration. Within minutes, the tension eased. When she finished, one of the Zurich men smiled for the first time all morning. "Miss Sophia," she replied. "Miss Sophia, your perspective is enlightening. Perhaps we misinterpreted your company's goals." Ethan watched in awe as she translated their reply, her voice soft but powerful. Within half an hour, what could have been a crisis turned into an opportunity. Zurich agreed not only to stay in the deal, but to increase their investment. When the meeting ended, the delegates left with warm handshakes and genuine smiles. Ethan turned to her, still processing. "You just saved your billion-dollar deal again," she finished with a small grin. He laughed, shaking his head. "I'm starting to think you're my guardian angel." Sophia smiled, but something in her chest tightened. She had never liked the word angel. Angels didn't bleed, didn't struggle, didn't get too close. But here she was, standing close enough to feel the warmth of him, close enough to be in danger of wanting more. Ethan stepped nearer, his tone softer now. "You're incredible, Sophia. The way you handled that, no one else could have done it." "Maybe not," she said, looking up at him, "but it's not just about language. It's about listening." He held her gaze for a long moment. "You make me want to be better at that." Their eyes met, no longer employer and employee, but two people standing at the edge of something neither had planned for. The air between them thickened with unspoken electricity. Ethan's voice dropped. "If I'd met you under different circumstances." Sophia took a slow step back, breaking the moment. "You didn't." He exhaled, forcing a smile. "Right. Of course." But as they walked back toward the elevator, something inside him refused to settle. That evening, a charity gala was held in honor of the successful merger. The city's elite filled the ballroom with champagne flutes and hollow laughter. Ethan arrived looking every inch the billionaire tycoon. Perfect posture, perfect suit, perfect smile. Sophia, at his insistence, came too, no longer in uniform, but in an elegant navy gown that drew quiet admiration from everyone who saw her. She blended grace and confidence so seamlessly that for a moment, the world seemed to revolve around her. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. Halfway through the evening, a man approached him, Vincent Hale, a rival CEO known for his arrogance and charm. "Sterling," he said with a smug grin, "I hear your driver's been doing more than driving lately." Ethan stiffened. "Watch your tone, Vincent." Vincent smirked, glancing toward Sophia across the room. "Interesting choice of company. Then again, you always did like fixing lost causes." Ethan's hand clenched around his glass, but before he could respond, Sophia appeared beside him, having caught enough of the exchange to understand. She smiled coolly at Vincent. "Funny. From where I'm standing, the only thing lost here is your sense of tact." Vincent blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. Ethan hid a grin. Vincent recovered quickly, forcing a chuckle. "Feisty. I like that." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll love how quickly I can make myself disappear from your company." Ethan's laughter broke through the tension. Vincent muttered something under his breath and walked away. Sophia turned to Ethan, her voice low. "Men like that are why I left consulting." "Men like that are why I work alone," he replied. Their eyes met again, and for a moment the noise of the gala faded, the music, the laughter, the glittering world around them, all blurred into nothing. "Thank you," Ethan said softly. "For defending me. For everything." Sophia's lips curved faintly. "You've been defending yourself for a long time, Ethan. Maybe it's time someone else did." He didn't realize how much those words would echo later. Back in his suite that night, Ethan stared out the window at the skyline. Something inside him had shifted again, not just admiration or attraction, but something deeper. She wasn't just helping him rebuild his company. She was rebuilding him. He wasn't sure he deserved it. Across the hall, Sophia sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone when a message arrived. "Mom's old friend, urgent call. They're saying someone from your past is looking for you." Her breath caught. Her past. The one thing she'd buried. The one thing that could destroy everything she'd built. Her peace, her job, her growing connection with Ethan. Sophia's hand trembled slightly as she read it again. She whispered, "No, not now." But deep down she knew. The peace she'd found with Ethan Sterling was about to shatter. Have you ever had a moment where everything was finally falling into place, only for your past to come knocking? The next morning, the city that had once felt like promise now loomed heavy with unease. The sunlight filtering through the hotel blinds was sharp and cold, cutting across Sophia's face as she sat on the edge of her bed, phone still in her trembling hand. The message glared at her again. "They're saying someone from your past is looking for you." Her chest tightened. For years, she had buried that part of her life, changed numbers, cities, even names at one point. Her new world, the one she had fought to build with education, discipline, and sheer willpower, had no room for ghosts. But ghosts had a way of finding cracks. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she called, voice tighter than she wanted. Ethan stepped in, phone in hand, his expression unreadable. "Morning. We need to talk." The tone sent a chill down her spine. "What's wrong?" He hesitated. "I just got a call from my head of security. Someone's been digging into your background." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Vincent Hale," he said darkly. "He's been asking questions about you, where you went to school, where you worked before, even your immigration records. He sent someone to the front desk this morning pretending to be with our legal team." Sophia stood abruptly, panic flickering in her eyes. "He can't." "He already did," Ethan interrupted. "And Sophia, there's something else." He handed her his phone. On the screen was an email from an anonymous source, forwarded to his company's PR department. Attached were scans of documents, unpaid debt notices from years ago, a minor court record under her name for a family dispute in Georgia, and a blurry photo of her at age 19, leaving a courthouse with her younger brother. Sophia's throat closed. She hadn't even seen that photo in years. "I can explain," she whispered. Ethan raised his hand gently. "You don't have to." "No, I do," she cut in, her voice cracking. "That was my brother. He got mixed up with the wrong people. I took the blame for something I didn't do so he wouldn't get a record. I spent months fixing my life after that. I've worked too hard to have it dragged up again." Ethan's eyes softened, but there was something else there too, confusion, maybe even fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it didn't matter anymore," she said fiercely. "I'm not that girl. I haven't been for years." He exhaled slowly. "Sophia, you have to understand how this looks. Vincent's already spinning it as a credibility issue. If the board thinks I hid your background, it could jeopardize the merger." "So you're saying I'm a liability now?" she snapped. "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." The air between them turned electric, not the kind charged with attraction this time, but with betrayal. Sophia stepped back, crossing her arms as if to shield herself. "You know, for someone who claims to have learned humility, you still care a lot about your image." Ethan's voice hardened. "You think this is about image? It's about survival. You don't understand what's at stake here." Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "No, I understand perfectly. When things get messy, people like you always find someone else to take the fall." His face fell. "That's not fair." "Neither is life," she said coldly. "But you wouldn't know much about that, would you, Mr. Sterling?" The use of his last name hit him like a slap. She turned toward the door, but he reached out, catching her wrist. "Sophia, don't walk away." "Then tell me you believe me," she said, her eyes glistening. He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. He hesitated, just long enough. Sophia's expression crumbled. "That's all I needed to know." She pulled free and walked out, the door closing softly behind her. For the next 24 hours, Ethan Sterling's world spun out of control. Vincent Hale leaked Sophia's file to the press. Headlines exploded online. Billionaire CEO's mysterious assistant linked to fraud case. Who is Sophia Barnes? The woman behind Sterling's sudden success. The merger's approval froze. Investors panicked. Board members called for an internal review. And through it all, Ethan couldn't think straight. He kept replaying that look in Sophia's eyes, the mixture of hurt, anger, and disbelief. He tried calling her. No answer. Texts went unread. By nightfall, she had vanished from the hotel. He paced his suite, running a hand through his hair, the city lights beyond the glass blurring into streaks of color. For the first time in his career, he didn't care about the numbers, the deals, the headlines. He cared about her. And he had let her walk away when she needed him most. Meanwhile, across the city, Sophia sat alone in a dim cafe near the Bund, hood pulled over her head, phone face down on the table. She had read the articles, the comments, the cruelty of strangers who knew nothing about her life but felt entitled to judge it. She wanted to disappear again, to run, to hide, to rebuild somewhere far away. But the thought of Ethan, of the man who had once laughed at her, then learned to trust her, and now doubted her, cut deeper than she'd expected. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You don't know me, but I have proof Hale fabricated your record. Meet me tomorrow morning. Alone." Sophia frowned. Her instincts screamed caution, but something about the wording, it felt urgent, desperate. She replied, "Where?" "Old Harbor Pier, 8 a.m. She stared at the message for a long moment, then locked her phone and whispered to herself, "If this is how I clear my name, so be it." Back in his suite, Ethan stared out at the skyline until dawn, his reflection hollow-eyed and weary. He remembered every word Sophia had said in that car days ago, about respect, about listening, about people showing who they are when they think no one's watching. He had failed that test. Again. He closed his eyes and muttered, "I don't deserve her." But when he opened them, something had shifted. He wasn't the man who laughed at his driver anymore. He wasn't even the man chasing billion-dollar deals. He was someone who finally understood what mattered. And if there was even a chance to make it right, he would take it. The next morning, Sophia walked toward the fog-shrouded pier, coat wrapped tightly around her. The air smelled of salt and rust. A single figure stood waiting, hood up, hands buried in pockets. "Are you the one who messaged me?" she called out. The figure turned. It wasn't who she expected. Vincent Hale smiled. "Good morning, Sophia." Her stomach dropped. "You didn't really think I'd let you ruin my deal, did you?" Sophia took a step back, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" "Simple," he said smoothly. "You'll make a statement to the press admitting you falsified your identity to get close to Ethan Sterling. Say you were after his money, his company, whatever sounds believable. Then disappear." "And if I don't?" Vincent's smile widened. "Then I make sure you never work again. Anywhere." Sophia's fists clenched. "You're a coward." "Maybe," he said, leaning closer, "but cowards win when heroes walk away." Before she could respond, a familiar voice echoed from behind. "Then it's a good thing I stopped walking." Ethan. He stepped out of the fog, eyes blazing, phone in hand. "Everything you just said is recorded." Vincent froze. Sophia's breath caught. "Ethan, how did you?" He glanced at her briefly, his voice steady. "I followed the only person who ever told me the truth." Vincent's face twisted. "You think anyone will believe you?" Ethan smiled coldly. "When I'm done, they'll have no choice." "Have you ever trusted the wrong person, only to realize the one you doubted was the only one who ever truly stood by you?" The wind at Old Harbor Pier howled like an open wound. The gray morning fog wrapped around the three of them, Ethan, Sophia, and Vincent, casting everything in ghostly light. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Ethan stood his ground, one hand gripping his phone, its red recording light glowing faintly. Vincent's expression shifted from smug confidence to something darker, fear disguised as anger. "You think anyone will take your word over mine?" Vincent snapped, stepping closer. "You've got nothing, Sterling. That recording won't mean a thing once I make a few calls." Ethan didn't flinch. "It's not just my word anymore," he said evenly. "I've already sent the file to 3 journalists, time-stamped, with GPS data. By the time you reach your car, the world will know exactly what you did." Vincent's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." "No," Ethan replied calmly. "For the first time, I won't." Sophia watched in stunned silence as the two men faced off, her pulse thudding in her ears. Then Vincent's mask cracked. He turned sharply, shoving past Ethan, muttering curses under his breath as he stormed down the pier. The fog swallowed him whole. For a few long seconds, neither of them spoke. The air buzzed with adrenaline and disbelief. Finally, Sophia whispered, "You followed me." Ethan turned to her, his expression softening. "I had to. You didn't answer my calls, and when I saw that message come through security logs." "You tracked my messages?" "Yes," he admitted. "But only because I was terrified something might happen to you." Her eyes searched his face, torn between anger and gratitude. "You had no right." "I know," he said quietly. "But I couldn't just sit there knowing I might lose you, and not because of a headline or a deal. Because I'd already lost your trust once." The vulnerability in his voice disarmed her. She wanted to stay angry, to keep her walls up, but something in his eyes made it impossible. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for me?" Ethan stepped closer, rain beginning to mist around them. "Because you risked everything for me first. You believed in me when I didn't deserve it. You made me see people differently, see myself differently. And I don't want to go back to the man I was before you." Sophia swallowed hard. Her heart pounded so fiercely it almost hurt. "Ethan." He took another step, his voice trembling with honesty. "I was wrong to doubt you. I was wrong to think this deal, this company, this image meant more than the truth. I don't care about the board or the headlines anymore. I just care about making this right, with you." Sophia's throat tightened. "You don't even know if I can forgive you." He smiled faintly. "Then let me spend however long it takes finding out." For a moment, all the noise faded, the waves, the wind, the chaos of the city beyond the fog. They stood inches apart, two people who had seen the best and worst of each other, held together now by the fragile thread of trust. Sophia looked away, blinking back tears. "You shouldn't have had to save me. I'm used to fighting my own battles." "I didn't save you," Ethan said softly. "You saved yourself. I just made sure everyone finally saw it." Her lips parted to speak, but then her phone buzzed. It was a message from one of Ethan's lawyers. "The recording's gone viral. Vincent Hale is suspended pending investigation. Zurich and Shanghai boards reaffirming deal support." Sophia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Ethan's grin was boyish, disbelieving. "You just got your name cleared and saved a $1 billion deal, again." Sophia shook her head, laughing softly. "We both did." Hours later, back at the hotel, Ethan's phone was flooded with calls and messages from investors, journalists, and partners. But for once, he let them go unanswered. He found Sophia sitting in the lounge by the window, still in her rain-soaked coat, staring out at the skyline. He walked over quietly and sat across from her. "Shanghai, Zurich, and the PR team all want statements," he said. "But I told them they'll wait." Sophia arched a brow. "You told billionaires to wait?" He grinned. "Apparently, I'm learning from the best." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "You really don't know when to quit, do you? Not when it comes to what matters." Her eyes softened. "So what happens now?" "Well," he said, leaning back, "first, I'm making sure Vincent's entire network faces legal consequences. Then I'm offering you a new position, head of global communications. Full authority. No chauffeur duties." She blinked, stunned. "Ethan, that's the least I can do," he finished gently. "You deserve to be seen for who you are, not where you came from." Sophia stared at him, speechless. The offer, the sincerity, it was everything she had fought for. Yet part of her hesitated. "And if people think I only got it because of you?" "Then they'll learn the same lesson I did," Ethan said. "Never underestimate you." Their eyes locked again, and for the first time in days, there was no tension, only quiet understanding. Sophia exhaled slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You know, you're nothing like the man who laughed at me that first day." He chuckled softly. "I know. That man was an idiot." "True," she said, smiling through her tears. Silence settled between them again, but this time it was warm, full of things neither needed to say out loud. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and set a small, folded piece of paper on the table between them. "This was the first note I made after meeting you. It says, 'Don't judge what you don't understand.' I didn't know then that it would take you to teach me what that meant." Sophia touched the note gently, her heart swelling. You're learning faster than most people do in a lifetime. Because you made me listen, he said quietly. And I'll never stop. She smiled. Careful, Ethan. You're starting to sound like a good man. He grinned. Maybe I'm finally becoming one. That night, after a long silence filled only by the sound of rain against glass, Sophia found herself standing on the hotel balcony, looking out over the neon-lit city. Ethan joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. To second chances? She took it, smiling. To learning the language of forgiveness. They stood there side by side, watching the rain fall over the skyline that had once symbolized ambition and now symbolized renewal. Ethan turned to her. Sophia. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Thank you for staying, he said softly. I almost didn't, she admitted. But I realized something. People can change, if they want it badly enough. Ethan nodded. I do. For the first time, there was no pride in his voice, no boardroom armor, only truth. Sophia smiled faintly. Then don't waste it. He took a deep breath, rain misting his hair, and whispered, I won't. The city below gleamed like a promise reborn. Somewhere deep in the fog, the first hint of dawn began to break. When was the last time you saw someone truly change, not because they had to, but because they chose to? The morning of the global merger signing arrived like a quiet storm. The air in the Sterling Enterprises headquarters was charged, every floor humming with energy and tension. The press swarmed the marble lobby, flashes from cameras reflecting off the glass like lightning. Ethan stood in front of the mirror in his private office, straightening his tie, but his hands weren't steady. His reflection stared back at him, older somehow, worn but alive. He thought of Sophia. For days since the pier, she'd been working tirelessly, repairing the company's image, coordinating with international boards, and turning the narrative from scandal to salvation. She was the reason any of this was happening. He looked down at his phone. One new message. Sophia, we're ready downstairs. Don't be late, Mr. Sterling. A smile tugged at his lips. He typed back, wouldn't dream of it. Then he glanced at the framed quote on his desk, something she had given him days ago. It read, Power means nothing if it silences truth. He pocketed the note and headed out. The signing ceremony took place in the grand atrium, its high ceilings draped with silver and white banners. Investors, journalists, and dignitaries from around the world filled the space. The entire world was watching, both to see if Sterling Enterprises would rise or crumble. Sophia stood near the podium, clipboard in hand, her usual calm composure hiding the storm of emotions inside her. She'd coordinated every detail of the event, from the press sequence to the order of speeches. Yet as Ethan approached, all the noise around her seemed to fade. He looked every bit the CEO again, but there was something softer in his eyes, something human. Sophia, he said quietly, just for her, you ready for this? She smiled faintly. I was born ready. He chuckled. I believe you. As the ceremony began, Ethan stepped up to the podium. The crowd hushed. Cameras flashed. His speech was being broadcast live around the world. He cleared his throat. 2 weeks ago, this company stood on the edge of collapse, not because of numbers or markets, but because of arrogance. Because I thought success meant standing above others, not beside them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He paused, scanning the audience, then found Sophia's eyes. But then someone reminded me that real leadership isn't about control. It's about listening. It's about respect. It's about knowing that the most powerful voice in the room isn't always the loudest one. Sophia felt her throat tighten. Ethan continued, his voice steady now. When I laughed at someone who deserved my respect, I failed not only her but everyone who's ever been underestimated because of where they come from, what they look like, or what job they do. That changes today. The audience leaned forward, spellbound. He gestured toward Sophia. This merger wouldn't exist without Sophia Barnes, the woman who not only saved this company but taught me what integrity sounds like in 9 different languages. There was a collective gasp, followed by thunderous applause. Cameras pivoted toward her. Sophia froze for a second, her heart pounding, before managing a modest nod. Ethan smiled. She's the reason we're signing this deal. And she'll be the one leading our global communications moving forward. More applause erupted. Sophia blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. The moment was cinematic, the arrogant billionaire publicly crediting the woman he once dismissed. Redemption, respect, rebirth. When Ethan stepped down from the podium, Sophia was waiting by the wings, her eyes shimmering. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I wanted to," he replied softly. "The world should know who you really are." "You just gave them a story they'll never forget," she said. He smiled. "So did you." The rest of the ceremony flowed like a symphony. Executives signed the documents, hands were shaken, and champagne was poured. But amid the glitter and applause, Sophia felt something shift inside her, a release, a peace she hadn't known in years. After everything, the humiliation, the doubt, the heartbreak, she had reclaimed her power. As the event ended, she slipped outside for air. The late afternoon sun had broken through the clouds, casting gold over the skyline. She leaned against the railing overlooking the city, letting the light warm her face. She didn't hear him approach until he spoke. "You always leave before the celebrations end," Ethan said, stepping beside her. She smiled faintly. "I've never been good at being the center of attention." He chuckled. "Funny. You were the center of mine the moment I met you." She turned, surprised by the raw honesty in his tone. His expression was open now, no masks, no pretense. "Ethan," she began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish," he said. "I've spent my whole life chasing numbers, deals, and headlines. But none of it ever made me feel the way you do when you walk into a room. You make me want to be better. To be better." Her breath caught. "You're serious." "As serious as I've ever been." Sophia looked away, the wind tugging at her hair. "Ethan, what we went through, it wasn't simple. It was messy. Painful. And I don't know if we can just pretend that didn't happen." "I'm not asking you to," he said softly. "I'm asking for a chance to start over. To earn whatever place you'll let me have in your life." For a long moment, she said nothing. The city stretched out before them, vast and shimmering, as if waiting for her answer. Then finally she turned to him and smiled, a real smile this time, bright and steady. "You already earned it. The day you chose truth over pride." He laughed quietly, relief breaking through his tension. "So, does that mean I can officially stop calling you Miss Barnes?" Sophia's laughter joined his. "I think you've earned Sophia." He reached for her hand tentatively, and she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, warm and steady. Below them, the city pulsed with life, car horns, voices, and the rhythm of possibility. For the first time in years, Sophia felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that evening, as twilight painted the skyline in pink and gold, they stood together on the balcony of the Sterling Tower, champagne glasses in hand. "Do you ever think about how different this could have been?" she asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "Every second. If I hadn't laughed that day, if I hadn't met you, I'd still be blind to everything that really matters." She tilted her head. "And what matters now?" He looked at her with quiet conviction. "People. Integrity. You." Sophia smiled, a tear slipping free, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was released. They clinked glasses softly. "To lessons learned," she whispered. "To second chances," he replied. The city lights flickered to life beneath them, glowing like a constellation of everything they'd fought for: trust, respect, love, redemption. And somewhere deep inside both of them, the laughter that once mocked had transformed into something far more powerful: hope. 6 months later, Sterling Enterprises had become the story of the decade, not because of its billion-dollar deal, but because of how it transformed from a symbol of greed into a beacon of redemption. Headlines no longer read "Sterling Scandal." Now they said, "Sterling rebuilds on integrity, the woman behind the transformation." Sophia's face appeared in global business magazines and leadership panels. She'd gone from chauffeur to chief communications officer, and no one dared question how she'd earned it. The once silent girl behind the wheel had become a voice the world listened to, articulate, poised, and fiercely human. Ethan, too, had changed in ways no one expected. He didn't walk into boardrooms to intimidate anymore, he walked in to inspire. His laugh, the same one that had once humiliated Sophia, now carried warmth. On a chilly morning in March, the two of them stood side by side on the rooftop of Sterling Tower, overseeing the new solar-powered fleet being unveiled for the company's global sustainability initiative, Sophia's idea, fully funded by Ethan. 10 cities, she said, looking down at the sleek silver vehicles lined below, each embossed with a new company motto, driven by respect. 10 today, Ethan replied, smiling. 100 by next year. Sophia nodded, folding her arms. You're getting good at listening. He grinned. Only to the right people. The breeze tugged gently at her hair as the skyline shimmered around them. The same city that once felt like a cage now stretched endlessly, filled with possibility. Do you ever think about that first day? Ethan asked quietly. She laughed. Every time I see a Mercedes. He chuckled. You know, I still can't believe how arrogantly I acted. Sophia raised a brow. Oh, I can. You wore that arrogance like a tailored suit. He smiled sheepishly. Guess you untailored it. Her laughter joined his, rich and unrestrained. The bond they shared now wasn't just professional, it was something deeper, forged in fire and truth. Later that afternoon, Sterling hosted a charity gala celebrating diversity and education. The ballroom glowed with soft golden light, chandeliers reflecting over an audience that included politicians, activists, and CEOs. Ethan took the stage briefly, his words now carrying humility instead of grandeur. Leadership isn't about titles or wealth, he said. It's about learning. And sometimes, the greatest teacher arrives when you least expect it, maybe behind the wheel of your car. Laughter rippled through the audience, warm and genuine. Sophia, standing near the edge of the crowd, smiled. After the applause, Ethan stepped down and joined her, offering his hand. Dance with me. She hesitated. You? Dancing? I've been practicing, he said, mock offended. You've inspired a lot of self-improvement lately. She smirked. Then show me what you've learned. They moved to the rhythm of a slow jazz melody, the city lights outside flickering like stars. Around them, people whispered, smiled, took photos, but neither of them cared. For Sophia, it wasn't about the cameras or the story anymore. It was about knowing she'd rewritten her own narrative. Remember when you told me people can change? Ethan murmured as they danced. She nodded. I remember. He smiled. Thank you for proving it. She looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. You did that yourself. I just refused to let you stay the man you were. He laughed quietly. And thank God for that. They swayed for a moment in silence, the music carrying their unspoken thoughts, about the road that brought them here, the battles fought, the lessons earned. When the gala ended, they slipped away from the crowd and found themselves outside, standing beneath the city's velvet night. The streetlights bathed the pavement in gold. Sophia looked at the cars lined up for the evening, all Sterling's new fleet, electric, gleaming, clean. The irony wasn't lost on her. Ethan followed her gaze. Funny, isn't it? What is? How something that once symbolized status became the tool that taught me humility. Sophia smiled faintly. Life has a way of driving us to the right lessons. He grinned. Pun intended? She shrugged. Maybe. They stood quietly for a moment, watching a group of employees laugh as they climbed into one of the cars. You know, Ethan said softly, there's something I never asked you. Sophia glanced at him. What's that? When I laughed at you that first day, what made you stay? You could have walked away. Sophia took a slow breath. Because walking away wouldn't have changed anything. But showing you who I really was, that did. He nodded slowly, eyes glinting with admiration. You changed me more than I'll ever be able to repay. She smiled. You just did, by meaning it. He reached for her hand again, this time without hesitation. She didn't pull away. I never thought I'd say this, Ethan said with a soft chuckle, but that laugh, that horrible arrogant laugh, was the best mistake I ever made. Sophia laughed lightly. Careful. I might start believing you have a heart now. He grinned. Too late. Weeks later, headlines would hail Sterling's transformation as one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in modern history. Analysts would call it a masterclass in leadership evolution. But for Ethan and Sophia, the real victory wasn't in the billion-dollar profits or the glossy press coverage. It was in the quiet moments, The shared glances across boardrooms, the late-night brainstorming sessions filled with laughter, the realization that mutual respect had grown into something neither of them expected, love. And though they never rushed it, both knew deep down that they were building something lasting, not just a company reborn, but a life rebuilt on truth, courage, and grace. Months later, as they walked through Sterling's new education center, dedicated to providing language programs for underprivileged youth, Sophia stopped at a plaque on the wall. It read, "In honor of those who speak the language of courage, kindness, and truth." Below it, etched in silver, were two names, Ethan Sterling and Sophia Barnes. Sophia touched the plaque gently. "You didn't have to put my name on this." Ethan smiled beside her. "I didn't. The board insisted. They said you're the reason this place exists." She turned to him, her eyes glimmering. "This means more than any title ever could." He nodded. "It should. Because this," he gestured around at the bustling classrooms, "this is your legacy." Sophia exhaled slowly, emotion washing over her. "Our legacy." Ethan smiled, his voice warm and sure. "Ours." They stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the sound of children learning, laughing, growing, the same music that had guided Sophia all her life. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and rose. It felt like the world itself was applauding. Would you have forgiven someone who once humiliated you, if their actions proved their heart had changed? Share your thoughts below. Your story might inspire someone else's redemption.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.